It's among the top 3 of my favorite promises in all of Scripture. Talked about it last time. From 1 Peter chapter 5, it's in verse 7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Well, we talked about casting anxiety, and I want to remind you of this. It's a paradigm. It's a map for all of our lives. It's a principle that never does not apply, in my opinion. But here it is. You cannot cast what you do not identify. See, to me, the idea that God invites me to cast, to throw, to push onto him all my anxiety is huge. Partly because I personally struggle with anxiety. This is not an academic idea for me. It's part of my story. It's in my autobiography. I struggle daily with anxiety. Sometimes it's just, as I said last time, it's just this generalized spinning anxiety that's just beneath the surface. And other times it comes up and it just vibrates. It captures my field of vision, and all of the world then gets seen through the lens of anxiety. I'm not the only one who is this way. If you aren't, I am happy for you, because there's nothing fun about this. But I do need to say, if you are not one of those people who struggles this way with anxiety, it's easy to somewhere between disbelieve and discredit those who do. It's really hard for a person who doesn't deal with anxiety, or for whom anxiety is not a big deal. It's hard for those people to have any kind of empathy toward those of us who do. I've had this thought for myself that maybe that's one of the reasons that God permitted me to have the level of anxiety I had. Because today I have a much deeper appreciation for, certainly a much deeper understanding of, a greater compassion for people who come to me with the issue of anxiety. It's made me more sympathetic, and beyond that, it's made me empathetic. I am able to not only feel sorry for them, but I am able to enter into their struggle with them to a much greater degree. Well, okay, enough about me, but maybe just a little more about anxiety and casting all our anxiety on him. When people come to me in my role as counselor, not everybody comes with anxiety, but I can say that most everybody who comes to me has anxiety. Why do you go to a counselor? You go to a counselor because there's an issue in your life that you can't figure out, that's getting in your way or holding you up or pulling you down. Most people feel some measure of anxiety because of that. And so I work almost every day with people who are struggling with anxiety. And when they talk to me about their anxiety, in a way, that's a form of casting their anxiety on me. I've learned from my dad, the best thing I can do is do what the catchers in the at the All-Star game, baseball All-Star game break, when they have the home run derby, you've got the coach or friend lobbing pitches in, and the guys at bat trying to blast them out of the ballpark. Well, the catcher catches anything that the batter doesn't swing at or hit, and they just lay it aside. They catch it, lay it aside. They catch it, and they lay it aside. And that's what I've learned how to do. I catch it. but I lay it aside. Because if I take their anxiety on me, it will overwhelm me. It'll sink the ship. But see, that's one of the wonders of the majesty of Christ. He doesn't just catch it and lay it aside. He catches it to carry it with and for us. Anxiety is one of those things that some people say it's a sin to have anxiety, because they look at what Peter wrote in the book of Philippians, where he said, do not be anxious for anything, but with prayer and petition, make your requests known to God, and you'll experience the peace of Christ. Well, I mean, that's paraphrase. So that from that, they get, okay, if you're worried about it, you're violating that. Isn't that a command? Do not be anxious. And I suppose if you interpret that as a command, then yeah, I'm breaking the command when I am anxious. But see, I'm not sure it's a command as much as a admonition. As though, here's how I read it. Why would you worry about things, anything, when you can pray about it and carry it to God? Okay, whatever you believe about worry and anxiety are, I think they're really the same thing with differences in degree and intensity. I think anxiety is when worry gets intense, you become anxious. Well, everybody probably has their own meter for where that click over happens, but worry is the beginning of anxiety. And I suppose there are some people that would say anxiety is the beginning of worry. I don't care. All I'm saying is, I have this promise, you have this promise, that we can cast our anxieties, our worries. See, an anxiety is not just a concern. An anxiety is a concern that is expanding to take up my whole field of vision. I mean, it's capable of, see, anxiety is capable of capturing your entire life. When Peter writes, cast all your anxieties on him. Wow, there ought to be a sense of relief in that. That God, it isn't like do something, be some way, be stronger, be smarter, be wiser, be more righteous, be more holy, and then you can cast your anxiety on him. And oh, by the way, when you are these things, you'll have less anxiety. That's not what he makes the assumption that you and I are going to feel anxiety. And when we do, we have this honor, this privilege to be able to, without judgment or condemnation, cast our anxiety on him. Somebody needs to hear that. Now, everybody doesn't struggle with that same deal of, gosh, if I admit my anxiety and talk about my worries, I come across like a needy, wimpy, I don't want to be that guy. I get that, because I hate being that guy. The problem is, I am that guy. And one of the only things that can relieve that or solve that is God intervening in my life somehow to either take away the issue that's creating the anxiety that I feel, and sometimes he does, but more likely he gives me what I need to confidently, well, maybe not even confidently, adequately address the issue. And when I have that, I can get through, okay? I'm not saying you're going to get through this or I get through this with no bumps, no bruises, no scrapes, no blood. No, there is often going to be bruises and bumps and scrapes and blood. But when I cast my anxiety on him, he will sustain me through it. That's the implication. Does he always make my anxiety go away? No, not in my experience. In my days of chronic anxiety, I often, many, many times, every day, tried to cast my anxiety on him. It didn't make it instantly go away. I discovered that one of the things I could do in that process was to remind myself of his promises. There's a couple of promises or statements in the book of Psalms that were very helpful to me. When I am afraid, I will trust in you. Simple. Okay. When I'm afraid. If you're anxious but not afraid, you're not really anxious. You may be concerned, but anxiety always carries fear. When I'm afraid, I will trust in him. A kindergarten kid can memorize that. And even on a kindergarten level, they can embrace the meaning of it. I suggest it to you. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. I wonder, in a world that goes pretty much at the speed of sound, where most of us have a stack of demands on our time and energy and resources that we feel we'll never be able to meet, in a world where we're barely meeting having the ends meet financially month to month, where uncertainty is the rule, it's essential that you and I trust that we have the supreme being in the universe caring for us. Now, that he cares for us means a few things. First, easiest is he cares about you. Don't forget, God's not in heaven and missing anything in your life. Everything that happens to you and I goes through at least his permission. There are some things that he causes. Everything else he permits. So he's never surprised about what happens to us. He cares about us. He is aware, fully aware of what's happening in our life. And the other piece of that is he goes beyond just caring about us. He cares for us. Have you ever had a kid who was sick and you had to care for them? What does that mean? Well, it means you took care of them. You, as a parent, you did the best you could to give them what they needed at the moment. We're human parents, and so we don't always do that perfectly. God is a perfect parent, and he always is able to perfectly meet our needs. He is able to care for us. Easy to lose track of that because we live in a world that says, no, buddy, hey, you got to take care of yourself. Don't be silly. Nobody's going to take care of you. You better take care of yourself. Or we live where the other message is, poor you, poor little you, you poor victim. Why aren't people taking care of you? Well, in the middle, there is this substantial, solid ground to stand on that says, you can throw your anxieties on Christ because he cares for you. So my simple application is, get out a piece of paper today and list in writing your anxieties, and then walk your way through that list and say of each thing on it, my Father, I cast this on you. There's no magic in it, and yet there might be. But there's peace and hope, and maybe even at some point, joy. I'll see you next time on So Care for Stevie Boy.